It's just after 2 in the morning. We're live in Dubai, in the Gulf, a region very much in the sights of Iranian drones and missiles fired from over the waterway just off in the distance behind me there. This is the 7th day of a conflict that's dragged in regional neighbors, claimed many lives, and threatens the global economy. Today alone, the Israel Defense Force says it's hit 400 targets inside Iran, with the Iranian Red Crescent saying more than 1,000 people have died so far. While Donald Trump is warning only Iran's unconditional surrender will end the fighting, Tehran continues to hit back, including more strikes on Israel. Well, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterrez has condemned all the violence, saying it's time to stop the fighting. Well, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says U.S. attacks on Iran will surge dramatically in the coming days after what was an already very heavy night of bombing. In fact, residents in the Iranian capital, Tehran, have told BBC Persian that last night was the worst of the conflict. And today, Israel released footage of a strike involving 50 fighter jets targeting the Iranian regime's military command bunker under a compound in central Tehran. Well, Lise Doucette, our chief international correspondent, has our top story tonight on day 7 of the war.
Tonight, in the last light of dusk, the dark rises in Tehran. The massive explosions which multiply as this war enters its second week. By day, more disbelief. Towers of smoke blot the sky. See the white monument on the right? It's Tehran's most famous tower on Azadi, Freedom Square, the place where Iranians have marked the moments which matter. A new phase in the conflict. That's how the countries firing these missiles, Israel and America, have described this moment. All of Iran is in their sights. In the southern city of Shiraz, buildings were flattened. Emergency teams, including the Red Crescent Society, responded in the dead of night. In the north, their own headquarters in the city of Mahabad was reduced to rubble. The clearing and cleanup have started. Israeli and American bombers now control the skies. They say they've already destroyed 60% of Iran's missiles, sank 24 ships. But their strikes are also smashing into everyday lives. Some residents of Tehran sent us messages through the BBC's Persian service.
The house was shaking for 5 minutes straight. Last night was the worst night. No, I'm not okay. I barely slept last night because of the constant explosions.
It was terrible. They were hitting so hard that all the windows were shaking.
I woke up at around 4 a.m. from the noise. I could hear the flight jets early in the morning.
Israeli lives are also being shattered. This residential building on the outskirts of Tel Aviv took a hit. Today, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the scene of an Iranian attack earlier this week in Beersheba in the south. 19 Israelis were injured here. But fewer missiles and drones are now slamming into Israeli cities. The President, Isaac Herzog, meeting the U.S. ambassador, hailed their coalition's success.
I believe that the coalition that we are seeing now emanating in the Middle East is a force of good.
This bunker, attacked for a second time today, was meant to protect Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. He was killed in the very first salvos. But his clerical order hasn't collapsed.
We have no option just to resist to the last bullet that we do have and to the last soldier that we do have. This is the very heroic, very nationalistic battle for us.
After Friday prayers, the government's supporters braved the bombs in a show of defiance. President Trump is calling for their leader's unconditional surrender. They're telling him, our fight goes on. Lise Doucette, BBC News.
Well, a giant American bomber capable of carrying 24 cruise missiles has landed in the UK after the Pentagon warned of a surge in strikes on Iran. But when Donald Trump calls for unconditional surrender, what could that mean for the course of the war? Sarah Smith has more from Washington.
The Commander-in-Chief welcomed an array of sporting executives to the White House today. He is committed to saving college sports as well as to defeating Iran. He posted on social media, "There will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender." Over the last 7 days, there have been confusing and contradictory messages about why the president chose to start this war and what the objectives are. He began by urging the people of Iran, via social media, to overthrow their government, to change the regime.
I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country.
But President Trump's team and his supporters shudder at the mention of regime change. It sounds too much like Iraq and Afghanistan. The Defense Secretary insists this is a very different conflict.
This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change.
Donald Trump has said consistently for years that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. His own intelligence services say that prospect was about a decade away.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people.
His Secretary of State was sent to Congress to brief lawmakers on what the administration wants to achieve in Iran.
So two things, and two things can be true. Number one is our mission and our focus is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and their ability to manufacture them, as well as the threat posed by their Navy to global shipping. That's our objective. That said, we would not mind, we would not be heartbroken, and we hope that the Iranian people can overthrow this government.
An American B-1 bomber on its way to the Middle East, landing at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire today, illustrates how the UK changed its stance on the war this week, reversing the original decision not to allow the US access to British bases. The US says it is about to move into a new phase of this conflict and that they will significantly escalate their attacks on Iran in the coming days. While at the same time, President Trump is insisting that he should have a personal say in who becomes the next supreme leader in Iran. He wants somebody who would do business with America, who would accede to his demands, basically, including giving up the country's nuclear program. The US did have several people in mind who they thought could take over in Tehran, but they say they have now all been killed in the Israeli and American airstrikes.
Sarah, thank you. Sarah Smith, our North America editor there at the White House. Back here in the Middle East, in the past 24 hours, there have been more Iranian strikes on Gulf states. Here, the UAE says its air defenses have intercepted 9 ballistic missiles and 109 drones today alone. In Bahrain, more drones were shot down. And in Kuwait, a fire could be seen near a military base hosting US forces. Kuwait's defense ministry says 67 army personnel have been injured since the war began. Well, Anna Foster is live in the Qatari capital, Doha, for us tonight. Anna.
Well, Clive, in the last hour, the military here says it shot down 9 drones today and another struck in an uninhabited area. And this morning, the Al Udeid Air Base, the biggest US military base in this whole region, was also targeted by Iran. And what that means is more national security alerts to mobile phones, warning people to take cover, and also a different warning of the global impact that the fighting is having. Today, Qatar's energy minister has said that oil and gas producers here in the Gulf region could shut down their exports within weeks, sending prices soaring. Tonight, Iran has denied that it's closed the critical Strait of Hormuz waterway, saying that it's only stopping tankers with US or Israeli connections. With more analysis on that, here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
The full extent of attacks over the past few days on key energy and economic infrastructure in the Gulf is becoming clear. Here, Bahrain's key oil facility is hit.
My God!
And it's not the only Gulf nation. This is the view from the skies at what happened at one of Dubai's famous Palm Islands. Tankers ablaze too. And today, Qatar's energy minister warned that all Gulf energy exporters will have to cease exports in days, just as Qatar has done with its gas. The oil price shot up after he predicted it would surge to $150 a barrel, risking bringing down the economies of the world.
If the war continues, then we will see production shut-ins, and that would mean a higher oil price, and that would essentially mean for the rest of the world weaker macroeconomic outlook and potentially higher inflation. So this is very serious.
The main issue is still the inability to guarantee safety of oil and gas tankers, the red triangles here, through the Straits of Hormuz. The flow of these and other ships too has stopped almost entirely, and now the oil price, which had reacted calmly at first, has started to rise significantly. But other products of the sector, such as fertilisers and jet fuel, have seen difficult spikes in prices too, illustrating the potential widespread inflationary impacts. UK petrol prices have already responded since Monday, as can be seen here in the same station we filmed at in Manchester, mirroring the national rise of 6p a litre for diesel and 3p for unleaded. The world has seen an almost total blockage of the most important artery of global energy flows in the Straits of Hormuz. So no surprise that the crude oil price is up 25% at $90 a barrel, with consequences already being seen at the petrol pumps, and now a credible warning of a further move to $150 a barrel. This is because the economic consequences of this conflict aren't just a byproduct, they're part and parcel of how the war is being fought. And what we're hearing today could well partly be a form of Gulf diplomacy aimed at their American allies. President Trump has in the past changed tack as a result of economic and market pressures, but for now he's playing down the impact.
Yesterday, my administration announced decisive action to help keep down the oil prices, including offering political risk insurance for tankers transiting into the Gulf, as you know, pretty dangerous territory.
For now, an inflationary wave from the Gulf looks set to hit the world, including UK shores. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
Well, the skyscrapers may still be shining here in Doha tonight, but this is a far quieter city than usual. Qatar has suspended all public entertainment and all gatherings while the drone and missile threat from Iran remains high. That is why the country's airspace is still largely closed as well. We've heard in the last hour that a limited number of evacuation and cargo flights will be allowed to leave. And diplomatic sources here tell me that they are pushing for a ceasefire, and they are hoping, Clive, that they don't get drawn into an offensive campaign that would widen this war even further.
All right, Anna, thank you. Anna Foster there reporting from Doha. Well, a second government charter flight bringing British nationals back to the UK from the Gulf left Oman this afternoon. It's in addition to some commercial flights that are still operating from there. Air traffic is limited over much of the Middle East, with Downing Street saying more than 160,000 British nationals have now registered their presence with the Foreign Office in the region. Here in Dubai, Nick Beek has been speaking to some of those who've been left stranded.
Finally home. British families brought back on the first UK government emergency flight from the Middle East. Some called their 24-hour delay shambolic. Others just happy to be safe.
We just registered and we were very lucky to get on it, so very grateful for the team there with everything they organised.
It's Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, where the majority of Brits are stranded in the Gulf. Today, another alert here for incoming Iranian missiles.
Oh my God, it was terrifying.
29-year-old Sophie from Buckinghamshire contacted the BBC. She says she suffers from severe anxiety and feels abandoned by the British government and British Airways.
It's been me on the phone, on hold for hours on end. Last night hit my breaking point and I just could not stop crying on the phone. It's been incredibly stressful.
BA told us it's doing everything to support and stay in touch with its customers. Sophie says she's been offered a flight out next Thursday. At Dubai International Airport, more commercial flights have been leaving, including for the UK. Emirates says it's resumed more than 60% of services, and Etihad is once again operating from Abu Dhabi to Heathrow and Manchester. We've seen here how more flights are now running, but this is by no means back to normal, and everyone knows the situation could change again because Iran continues to hit out at its neighbours in the Gulf. And so the UK government is promising more of this, an evacuation plane from Oman, which is next to the UAE. But for many caught up in this crisis, a flight to safety is still out of reach. Nick Beak, BBC News, Dubai.
There is, of course, another front in this war, and along with its attacks on Iran, Israel has intensified its military campaign in Lebanon, with the Israeli Defense Force saying there's been a broad-scale wave of strikes on the capital, Beirut. The targets are Iranian-backed Hezbollah positions and infrastructure. Israel's attacks on East Lebanon have killed at least 9 people. That's according to the Lebanese ministry. And in the south of the country, Israeli ground forces continue their advance. In a moment, we'll hear from Lucy Williamson, who's close to the Lebanon border in northern Israel. But first, here's Wira Davis in Beirut.
In a public square dedicated to the victims of previous wars, families made homeless by Israel's bombing sleep and eat in the open. They and thousands of others were told by Israel to leave their homes in southern Beirut in an unprecedented mass evacuation order. We fled right after the warning, but they bombed immediately, she says. It was the same yesterday. A warning, then more bombing. They're leaving with good reason. The district of Dahir, a Hezbollah stronghold, is being pummeled around the clock.
Bring the camera.
Well, airstrikes are continuing here in southern Beirut throughout the day and throughout the night. We've just had one in the last couple of seconds. Most of this area is now under an Israeli evacuation order, and you can see why. Thousands of people have already left. And with bombing in the south and in eastern Bekaa Valley, few places in Lebanon can be considered to be completely safe. Displaced people arrive here from across the country, and shelters are running out of space.
Every shelter we go to tells us there are no spots left, no space. They tell us to wait until new places open up.
On this map, we're around here.
Dunya was displaced from Dahir with her parents, young and old, dreading the prospect of another divisive and damaging conflict.
We didn't sleep last night. We couldn't sleep out of fear. And we were just seeing the news just to check on our homes. I think it's way too early for Lebanon right now to have like another war. And we're not ready enough, if you know what I mean.
300,000 people are now internally displaced here. And with Israel sensing the chance to deal Hezbollah a fatal blow, there's no immediate prospect of a return home. Wira Davis, BBC News, Beirut.
Israel's war with Iran has spread to its own northern border. Helicopter gunships firing on Hezbollah fighters who have returned to defend places they were pushed out of in 2024. Israeli forces have begun seizing strategic positions inside Lebanon and meeting resistance. This is an old conflict, but the mood among Israel's leaders now is new.
Here at the border, you can hear regular airstrikes from the Israeli Air Force, intense bursts of machine gun fire much closer to the border too. Israel says this is the first phase of its operation in Lebanon, and it's also building up a much larger military force along the border.
The build-up is fueling reports of a wider ground invasion. These tanks and armoured bulldozers moved into position here overnight. Israel's chief of staff says his objective is disarming Hezbollah, and evacuation orders have been issued for a vast swathe of southern Lebanon. Israel's army said today it had approved the continuation of attack plans against Hezbollah. It's described Hezbollah's decision to join the war as a strategic mistake. Israel's military might has never resolved the conflict here, but Donald Trump has said this war will end only with a white flag from Iran. Some are already looking to the horizon of a new Middle East, over the ruins of previous battles. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, on the Israel-Lebanon border.